Welcome to the Performance Collective, where I bring together experts across the running, fitness, and human performance space to share insights, experiences, and practical strategies for improving performance. Hosted by me, Hannah Witt, a USCA certified running coach and athlete success and operations manager. This podcast features conversations with elite athletes, coaches, nutritionists, chiropractors, race directors, and industry leaders. Whether you're chasing a personal best, returning from injury, or looking to better understand the science behind training and recovery, the Performance Collective offers actionable insights to help you train smarter and perform at your best. Today's guest is Paddy Lally, the team physio at Maximum Mileage Coaching, someone who works with everyone from everyday runners to elite athletes, helping them stay healthy and actually keep progressing. Paddy's not just on the physio side either. He's lived it. A former Great Britain age group triathlete, he still remains competitive, running 2:57 at the Houston Marathon, breaking the 3-hour barrier with smart pacing and grit. In this episode, we get into injury management, how to tell the difference between normal soreness and something more serious, and the small changes like cadence and strength work that can make a huge difference long term. If you've ever dealt with a niggle or just want to stay consistent in your training, this one's for you. Hey, welcome back. Today we have Paddy Lally on the podcast. He is actually the team physio here at Maximum Mileage. He works with everyone from elite athletes and pro cycling and football, all the way through just everyday runners just trying to stay consistent and injury-free. He's also a former international triathlete, so he doesn't just understand training on paper, he has lived it. And if you've ever struggled with injuries, setbacks, or just trying to figure out how to keep your body holding up while training hard, this episode is going to be massively helpful. Thank you so much, Paddy, for being on the show today. I didn't actually know that you were an international triathlete.
Yeah, well, it was sort of a one and done in my teenage years. I was in the GB age group triathlon. Ended up doing the European champs out in Dusseldorf, which was good. Took a lot of training to get there. That's sort of where the early inspiration to be a physio sort of came from. Seeing all of the injuries, getting back from those. So yeah, so
okay,
a different lifestyle now.
Oh yeah. Help me with geography. Dusseldorf is in Germany, right?
Correct. Yeah. And
okay.
I'm based in England here.
Okay, so that was a bit of travel. That's crazy, though. You were a teenager and you kind of catapulted to that level. How did that even happen? When did you get started?
Yeah, it was so. I mean, my whole sort of like sporting career sort of started around like playing football, and I remember soccer. I remember playing football, and there was this like run group running around the track outside where we were training for football. And at the time, I remember just thinking, it was only a young kid thinking that looks good fun. We'll give that a go. And it turned out to be like the local triathlon squad. So just through a few years of training, building up through a few sort of national races, getting a few podiums in a few races there, got selected for GB age group team. So I think I was about 15, 16 racing in the under 21s. And and ended up getting the opportunity to fly out to Dusseldorf in Germany to compete in the European champs, which was good fun, great experience. And it was a big learning curve, but certainly helps with everything where I'm at today.
Great. So you were playing football originally. Did you have any experience with swim, bike, run prior to that? Or did you just see those people running and kind of just jump into things?
No, exactly that. I was just playing football and then seeing the swim, bike, run, got involved in triathlon from there. And then that sort of spouted a bit of more of an interest in the more endurance sports. So from there, took up running track, running cross country, doing cyclocross, mountain biking, track cycling. So everything apart from swimming. Hated swimming, but everything else was good fun.
Yeah, I feel like swimming is the thing that people are either expert level or they're like, that's the worst. That's my worst discipline. But I'm sure you were talented and continue to be talented in all of them. And so now you're not only the physio for Maximum Mileage, but you're also coached by Nick, right?
Correct. Yeah. So got in contact with Nick about a year ago, maybe, with a few various goals. Wanted to train up to an ultra. Wanted to break that sub 3 in the marathon. So ended up finally breaking sub 3 in Houston this year in January, which was a really big goal. And then, unfortunately, after that, ended up getting injured myself, so I had to miss out on the ultra. But we'll certainly be back at that soon.
Yeah, I know. Didn't Nick help pace you for Houston to get you to that sub 3?
So we spoke about it beforehand, but Nick was also suffering a little bit with his hip at the time, so he wasn't sure whether he was going to do the half or the full. So I didn't have a good qualifying time going into it, so he was in the front pen, I was in the second pen. So consistently looking for him up the road, see if I could see his hat and try catch up, but it just never ended up coming to.
Well, that's still have your coach there in the same race with you and seeing him up ahead. That's got to be pretty motivating.
Oh, it was fantastic, and we were all in the same like Airbnb like leading up to it as well. So it was just good having that few days before and after, picking his brains on what I should or shouldn't be doing, or like we did the shakeout run together. So it was all really good experience, and as you said, just fantastically motivating for actually going on and getting the sub 3.
Well, congratulations. That's very late in me saying, but because that was back in January. But how did you find Houston? Did you like it?
Well, to be fair, if we take this as two things, Houston in itself as a city. So it was my first time in America, and I absolutely loved it. Big cars, big barbecue, a fantastic host of Jose when we were over there. It was a absolutely fantastic time. In terms of the actual race, honestly, I felt so focused on just running. I felt like I could have been running anywhere. I almost missed out on taking in any of the sights or anything around me. I was just focused on one foot in front of the other and making sure I didn't start slipping back.
Right. Well, what was the race like? Were you kind of, yeah, just walk us through it. Did you start in a pack? Did you have a race strategy in mind that you wanted to get to a certain position and find a certain pace pack? And then were you picking people off beyond a certain point, or what did that strategy look like for you?
So initially, I wanted to find like the 3 hour paces for the marathon, obviously, but because I was in the second pen, that was like your 3:20, 3:30 mark. Because I my previous PB going into it was 3:08, I think. So I couldn't get into the sub 3 pen to go with the paces. So I was sort of on my own for the full the full thing, really. Like the whole time is just picking off the next person in front. I knew I wanted to stay sort of in like your 4:10 to 4:15 per kilometer. So just made sure I was sticking to pace. The big thing with me is setting off too quick and blowing up. So I knew I just needed to stay that first half, just try stay just under sort of 1:30 for the first half. Managed to do it. And then I ended up catching up with the 3 hour paces from the pen in front. So I stayed with them for a while, but then I felt fresh coming into about 30, 35K. So from there, decided just kick on, push on. And I think I ended up with 2:57 on the dot. So it
Wow.
was good.
Yeah, you not only broke 3, you obliterated it. That's amazing. Good for you.
I appreciate it. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so for you were basically, like you said, by yourself and just kind of keeping track of your own splits and making sure that you were, not blowing up too early on. I wonder if you were in a race that, well, now that you have that time, if you could, tuck into a pack, conserve energy, and do even, a faster time.
Yeah, well, I hope so. I had a little discussion with Nick the other day, and obviously eyeing up all of the good for age qualifying times as everyone does for all of the world majors. So I think the quickest ones maybe Berlin. I think I'd need 2:45 for that. So I think now that I have a decent sub 3 time, getting a good pen at the start, sort of hoping we can target that for come Valencia at the in December. Just try and get myself in a pack, conserve a bit of energy, as you said, and hopefully go for 2:45 to 2:50, we'll say.
Right. Well, quick shout out to Jose for hosting you guys, because he's a riot. He's always posting so much on our group chat, and he's like an amazing person. I'm sure he was a great host also.
Oh, he's absolutely fantastic. Absolutely love the man. He's so supportive for everything. And when we were over in Houston, he was there all the time. He was absolutely fantastic for just helping out, showing us the city, showing us the site. It was absolutely fantastic to have him there. Yeah, I cannot thank him enough.
I love that you said something about the barbecue, the big cars, the big barbecue. And yeah, in Texas, everything is just basically pretty big. So your first US experience being in Texas, that's probably the most robust, we'll say, American experience that you could have had. But I'm glad that you enjoyed it, and hopefully you can come back and maybe do that race again, maybe do some other races in the United States. But what was the ultra that you had on your race calendar, but you had to kind of sideline due to injury?
Yeah, so I live in a city called Chester, which is like near like Liverpool and Manchester in the UK. And there's the GB Ultras, which is like the big ultra race community setup organizers like in the UK. So one of their races is the Chester 50, and the mile 6 or 7 maybe goes past like the bottom of my house. So I see it last year, seen it the year before, and I just thought that looks like a good bit of fun. So I'd signed up for the Chester 50. But yeah, unfortunately, following Houston, I'd prior to Houston, I'd done 2 or 3 marathons quite back to back. I just overloaded ITB. So following Houston, I had to take a bit of a break from running and just focus purely on rehab. But yeah, definitely back on the up now.
With the rehab that you do, obviously you know what to do since you're a physiotherapist, but have you been able to kind of tap into that triathlon, swim, bike, those disciplines to cross train through it, or has it the IT been pretty flared up that you don't even want to do those?
Yeah, it's a good question. So a lot of my sort of cardio the past 3 months really has been on the bike, been getting out on some pretty long bike rides, getting on the static bike in the gym, been for a few swims. As I said, I still can't really stand the swimming, so yeah, mainly been on the bike, been on the elliptical as well. Find a big thing with ITB pain is obviously you need to well, maybe touch on it later, but you can do a lot of you can do what you want cardio wise as long as it's not irritating that ITB. So try restrict on the running, restrict on any sort of up or down hills for the time being, and just try keep cardio taken away from there.
Sure. I had ITB stuff back in college, and I tell you, like, I took time off. I did stretches. I did single leg squats. I tried to get it as strong as I could, and then I just, went for it and went for a run. And I tell you what, even though it had been all this time, it's just the fascia and everything was like so not ready to. I don't know. I feel like I could have taken off a year to give it time to completely heal, but it still felt pretty tricky when I started. And it's almost like you just, when you do start running, you have to really become aware of pain versus discomfort. And,
Absolutely.
as a physio, I'm sure that you have to educate people too on, it's not going to feel 100%. And, there's a pain scale, and what number on that pain scale should it be at, and things like that. For yourself, have you started to try to run again, or are you still cross training?
Yeah, no, so for the past maybe like 3 4 weeks, started to try get back into running. I'm still using like well, usually I would do like my long run on a Saturday or Sunday. I'm still using like getting out on the bike for that instead, just to try avoid any sort of longer stuff at the moment. But yeah, definitely get back into running now. I actually did my first proper speed session last night, which was just felt amazing to get back
That's
into.
amazing. That's great.
It was good, but there's always a battle between my physio brain and my running brain. Running brain just wants to get out and go and ignore the physio side, telling it just needs to calm down, ease back into it. So it's always a battle, but yeah, looks like we're coming out the other side of it now.
That's great to hear. Have you kind of looked at your running form and thought, did this lend to the injury, or have you tried to fix anything there?
Absolutely. So I had a look at my data for the past year, and I think the big thing for me was my cadence. So I'm quite like a tall person anyway, and it's predominantly leg. I could still fit into small or medium t-shirts, but I'm 6'1", so it's all leg. So I thought that was the reason for my cadence being sort of like around the 150 mark, which I know is low. But what you find is when your cadence is lower, you're then more prone to overstriding. When you are overstriding, when your hips, when your legs on the back end, coming into that hip extension, you put a lot of tension through the ITB, and obviously over a period of time, a lot of tension through the ITB can create that sort of friction on the outside of your leg where the ITB inserts, and then obviously friction causes inflammation, causes that ITB syndrome that I was dealing with. So a big part of my training now is just trying to up that cadence. So I think the session last night was sort of averaging around 160 to 165. So just slowly trying to build that up, but it does feel a bit shuffly for the time being.
Yeah, I know the whole trying to adjust cadence is it's struggle. But yeah, what you were saying about ITB kind of being caused by leg extension and the friction, you're saying like when your leg is literally extended behind you during kind of your
Right.
kickback?
Yeah. So when your legs, obviously ITB can come on through a number of different ways, but for me and myself, it came from that friction and that over, like an overload basically, from because I was striding out, I was putting more tension through the ITB from when my hip was in that sort of kickback position. Because you find that the ITB like flicks over the head of the fibula when you're in that like coming close to straightening your knee. So obviously when you're striding out and your legs out the back, it's in that straightening out period. So it was just too much at there over a shorter period of time, basically.
I always thought, I learned something new today. ITB stuff was almost caused by overstriding in front of you, and kind of extending your leg too far in front of you, almost heel striking, so that tissue was elongated, stretched too much in front of you. So that is really interesting, though.
So it can come from that overstriding. So obviously the ITB is a band of fascia, and its main job is basically holding everything in. So you think you've got your quads holding everything in. So in theory, when you are striding out, you're asking a lot of your quads to sort of take a lot of the brunt of the load of that. So if you are striding out, you are going to find that that's going to put a lot of load through the ITB as well. So it can come from numerous things. The other big thing with ITB is that like lateral hip strength. So that's what a lot of my like rehab has been, as well as obviously focusing on the cadence, but also building up that lateral hip strength, because the ITB attaches to one of the glutes, like the TFL. So building up that lateral strength just to make sure that, again, you're not putting as much tension through it is really, really important for the rehab for that.
So lateral hip strength. So you're doing what, side planks, maybe kind of bent knee, side raises. I don't know what those are called, but that's what
Yeah,
I'm envisioning. Maybe like monster walks with a band around your knees, that
yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah, perfect. The amount of monster walks I've done walking up and down my kitchen cabinet is outrageous. But yeah, so loads of things like that in the early stage. And a big thing as well is just working on that hip stability. So a lot of sort of proprioception work, a lot of like balance work, just making sure that hip's as stable as possible. So I think that's a big thing, seeing just runners in general, is they can be as strong as they like, but they really lack, well, a few I've seen recently really lack that proprioception, that stability to an area, and it can just lead to a whole host of problems further down the line.
Yeah, of course. And I'm thinking about, is the ultra that you're hoping to do, is that a trail or is that on the road?
On the trail.
So you definitely need to have that lateral strength and stability in your hips, since you're going to be
Absolutely.
dodging about. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
how did you really get into physiotherapy?
So it's a bit of a long-winded story, but to make a long story short, I just enjoy I enjoy helping people. I think I'd really struggle in like an office-based work. I need to be talking to someone, I need to be seeing someone. And I think part of who I am and just trying to help people be better, get back to their goals is such an important part for me. I feel like I've been through my fair amount of injuries over the years, and just knowing the effects physically and also mentally that had on myself, potentially when I've not had the best advice in the past and it's taken a bit longer to get back to doing what I loved, triathlon, football, whatever, and just the impact that had on myself. I found that could be an avenue where I can make a difference in someone's life, and whether that's they get back to being able to go do a park run, or whether that's them getting back to competing in professional cycling, it's all part of the same.
Yeah, and that's so much empathy, right? That's a quality that you have. I think people who want to help other people, be them coaches or if they're in the healthcare industry, having that desire to really see people well and, get them out of their pain state as quickly as possible. And I think that's an amazing attribute to have. So great for you. Um, I I honestly, you've helped me personally. I've had issues that we've had calls and consult. You've helped my athletes. To name a couple, you helped one of my female athletes who did an ultra race. It was a 50K, and it was a lot of rocky terrain where it was steep descents into and out of like kind of riverbeds. And yeah, and you know who I'm talking about. I won't name drop, but she really had such a time with her knee, and you got her so that she was able to do a 25K just a couple months later. And that, I mean, I was checking in with her like every day, like, did you do Paddy's exercises? She's like, yes, I did them. And, it was on the plan. And so it was imperative to her healing, and just, it helps so much to have you on Team Maximum Mileage so that I can message you quickly and just be like, is this person's protocol to start running in a week, or should we hold off, and things like that. And I've done that with another athlete who he had right before his marathon. Unfortunately, he twisted his ankle and I think had posterior tibialis.
Yes.
I don't would it be tendonitis or tendinopathy? I always get confused over the two. But anyway, you helped him, and he had such a time. He was so disheartened by not being able to do his marathon, but he's back to running again. He's gearing up for a marathon long run or marathon pace within his long run this weekend. And he's got another marathon actually in 2 weeks. So you've been very pivotal in the longevity and health of my athletes. And I thank you for that.
Oh, good. This is exactly why we do it.
Right.
But no, I mean, just touching on there as well. So obviously, like working in physio and working in sport, I've had my fair share of butting heads with coaches, with managers. I think particularly in the professional, semi-professional football area, there's such a demand on, or such a sort of disjointed communication between the physios, the players, and the managers. There's countless times I've had issues with players returning to play too soon because the manager's forcing them into them. And I think it's the sort of coach to physio relationship partnership that we have going at Maximum Mileage is fantastic. I think the communication that me, yourself, Nick have is such a key part in how these runners are getting back to doing marathons within a few weeks, few months of coming back from an injury. So I think the praise certainly goes both ways in this conversation.
Oh, thank you. I'm just thinking, if an athlete who's listening, perhaps they're dealing with some sort of, it's in the niggle stage, correct? So niggle being, in America, maybe the vernacular is not as straightforward, but niggle being, we'll call not full-blown injury yet, something that's a little bit tweaked, but maybe less in volume for a couple days and everything should be back together. But for athletes who are in that stage where they don't think it's full-blown injury, and perhaps they're fairly new to running, so kind of monitoring their body and injuries in general is new to them.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of key signals would you suggest athletes to, yes, you need to go see physio. Here we call them like a physical therapist, or maybe just like a sports doctor. What would those signals be?
Yeah, so I think it's important. I think obviously every little niggle or tweak or slight bit of ache is not a sign to go run into a physio straight away. I think some people well, it can go one or two ways. Some people are very trigger happy with external ringing up a physio whenever the slightest little thing goes wrong, and some people are the other way and they can just never speak to a physio ever, and it's the running through sort of a dangerous level of pain. I think a big thing we try sort of work on is like your sort of pain scales type of thing. So if you were to rate your pain 0 to 10, and I'm not a huge fan of using that because obviously everyone's got different pain thresholds, it works in different ways. But I think from a general point of view, if your pain's sort of in like the 3 out of 10, it tends to be something that you can manage with a bit of load adjustment. You find a lot of running related injuries come from something somewhere is not pulling the weight, whether that is you need to work on some mobility, you need to work on some strength to be able to support the amount of running that you're doing, or you've just increased the mileage, increased the load too much. So one of the big things I always do when I get a new patient in, because everyone uses Strava, is that right? Pull up your Strava, let me see your chart. If that chart is like an ECG and it's up and down and up and down, there lies the answer to why they're getting injured. If it's nice and gradual, it's probably coming from somewhere else. What I would say is the big sort of red flags to be looking for is any sort of bony pain that you get in. We're looking at your stress fractures, we're looking at things like that. I think like an increased amount of fatigue obviously is a big thing at the moment about REDs and things like that. So, or like an inability to weight bear or anything serious like that, I'd really recommend getting in contact with a physio sooner rather than later. But then also, if you've had a niggle that's just not going away after deloading for a week or so, I think it can just be beneficial just to get a set of eyes on it, make sure we're not doing any damage, and just see if we can come up with a plan to build you back to doing what you need to be doing.
I appreciate you going through that. And so to kind of consolidate, bone injury is bad. If you can't bear weight, that's kind of indicative of a bone injury, which is not good. It's not always, but it's not good. If something hasn't cleared up with load adjustment within a couple of weeks, bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's very, very
or any like high levels of pain. Anything over like a 5 out of 10 is not a normal amount of pain to be in post run. And I think, and this goes back to me and talking about running brain versus physio brain. I think there's almost a case of too much knowledge in the area, because me rehabbing my ITB, got the knowledge, I've been able to rehab it, it's been fine. But then also the case of too much knowledge. I remember going for a run in the last marathon block and thinking, oh, you know what, my Achilles is a bit sore. I wonder what that could be. I wonder if I've got a bit of tendinopathy coming in. Wonder if I'm dealing with something. And then if you just take a step back, I know I've just done 35k off the back of a 100k week. I'm tired. Like, this is a very normal pain to be in. And it wasn't a high level pain. And it was that almost like case of too much knowledge and overthinking it, basically. So yeah, I would say any high level of pain is also a bad sign. You should probably get that checked out.
I'm the same as you, as being a running coach, kind of having this heightened self-awareness and being like, uh-oh, that hurts. Is that something, and having a biology background, I immediately assume the worst. But I've learned that if, it's been a long session, I take a shower, get some food in, maybe have a bit of rest, like, it's amazing what those things can do to kind of reset the body. And, definitely make sure that you're doing those things and taking care of yourself, because sometimes it can be a little psychosomatic even.
I absolutely. I think the psychosomatic side is a largely underexplored area when it comes to physio and running in themselves. I think it plays such a huge factor into injuries in general. I think particularly when your body, your mind, you think work stress, family stress, and all that's adding in, it can have such a physical presentation of heightened pain. So yeah, as you said, just having a day, taking care of yourself, making sure your head's in order can be such a valuable reset to what needs to be done.
That is really interesting that you mentioned that. Different types of life stress, work stress, family stress, maybe other health related issues, it can all manifest as physical pain in your body. And it's so unfortunate because it's like you feel like you don't have control over it. You're like, well, I'm doing the training and I can't help these other stresses in my life, but the way that it can show up in your body is quite real. And just to kind of touch on psychosomatic pain a little bit more, I think about people, I've had this before, if you have an injury that becomes a recurring injury, it's almost like you have this sixth sense that it's coming on again, even though it might not be, but that area, for some reason, that neural pathway is still a little bit glitchy. And so any kind of sensation you immediately assume is dangerous. Have you found that happen before?
Yeah, so funny you say this. I've had this conversation twice today with patients. So the way that like pain pathways work and the way that we like to sort of describe it when you're touching into that almost like psychosomatic pain. So say you had a big house and you've got locks on all the doors, locks on all the windows, and then one evening someone tries to break in through one of the windows. That lock on the window, that alarm system gets set off, so all the sirens are going, and then you fix that, sort that, whatever. But that lock's still not quite functioning the way that it should be. So there's a big gust of wind, it just rattles the window. It's nothing damaging, it's nothing, no one's trying to break in, but because that lock is not functioning in the way that it had, or it's got a bit heightened because of it, all the alarms in the house start going off again. So it's really interesting. You should say that in there. Sometimes when patients are dealing with, or patients, athletes, whoever, are dealing with pain, that doesn't necessarily equal tissue damage. It can indicate that there's other factors going on elsewhere that you maybe need to look at. And it's also, I think a big part of physio is building back that confidence into the athlete, into their hip, knee, ankle, whatever, and letting them know that it's as strong as needs to be. It can take all of the load that needs to be. They are fine to crack on and push on.
I think a lot of physical therapy that I've done has been it's been focused about, like you said, building confidence, but almost retraining those neural pathways so that the neuromuscular connection, everything is firing synchronistically again. And it's just, even though the exercises seem very minute a lot of the time, and you don't feel like, it's not like going to the gym and lifting heavy weight, you don't get a surge of dopamine and endorphins from it, but you're really trying to reprogram your mind-body connection with these really little exercises. And yeah, that's what I think about when I think about physical therapy. And hopefully too, you can get to the point where you're back in the gym lifting weight correctly. But unless you start small, then you really, it's really hard to do heavy lifting correctly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So I'm thinking about the football players that you work with, soccer players here, but and you mentioned something about how they are often pressured into returning to sport before they're ready. Maybe it's like internal pressure and they're like, I want to go back to playing like tomorrow, and something's broken. Or maybe it is a manager or some other person trying to get them back on playing field sooner than they should. Those have to be really difficult conversations that you have, but I'm just interested in what kind of injuries do you typically see with football players?
So a lot of like the butting heads and things like that came from when I was doing like the pitch side physio. So when someone's had a nasty tackle and they've sprained an ankle, they've damaged some of the ligaments in their knee, or even like concussions and things like that to an extent. And in the level I was working in, it was in like some of the lower leagues. So every player is, or even the manager is looking for their break to try get into the the higher levels of football within the area, within the country. So there's pressures coming from the players themselves, pressures coming from the footballers. And it was always like, no, I'm okay to carry on. I can push on. I dealt with a shoulder dislocation once, and the guy popped it back in himself and tried to get back on the field. And it's like, well, you probably need to go get that x-rayed, mate, right? Sooner rather than later. But he was just determined to get back on and get going. And it was a real argument as such, just to say, like, look, you need to stop, get this checked out. There's no point risking playing the next 20 minutes of a game when you're going to risk the rest of your season should something else be going on.
I actually, when I was in college, was an athletic training major for a little bit, which is, it's more, you know what an athletic trainer is. I don't know if there's a comparable term in the UK or if they call them athletic trainers, but a lot of it was I had to go to soccer games. I feel like I was at soccer games more than any other games, maybe volleyball too. But yeah, it's crazy the kinds of injuries that you see because soccer is such a high impact sport, and a lot of ACL, LCL, concussions were big. We had one guy, I mean, his Achilles was basically like threads, when you looked at the image, and it was so torn, and it's a brutal sport. And yeah, for concussions in general, even though, well, to a certain extent, I think concussions can be definitely applicable to endurance sports, because if you're biking and you crash, you probably, concussion is highly likely. If you're an ultra runner and maybe you take a stumble or something and you hit your head on a rock or something, that definitely can warrant having a concussion. But maybe explain a little bit to people who perhaps don't have like a medical background, biology background, what a concussion is and what are kind of signs that you should monitor within yourself to know what, is this serious?
To be fair, so it's a lot of the work that we did with the football was like, we did a lot of like pre-season testing. So there's a lot of, when someone goes down with a head injury, obviously first things first, you need to make sure nothing nasty is going on. So we'd always like check the neck and make sure nothing sort of sinister, nothing broken, make sure they weren't getting any sort of referred pain or anything down into arms or things like that. But a lot of like the initial signs of concussion are like the confusion. So one of the questions we always ask is, do you know where you are? Do you know what you're doing? Do you know the score? And there's a question like, do you know who's president at the minute or prime minister at the minute? And then that can also lead into, like, obviously from the confusion, you get like a bit angry, they get these big like mood swings coming in. You see a lot of like vomiting as well. So if you've had like a head injury and you're experienced any of these symptoms, it is worth just going and getting checked out. There's a lot of protocols that need to go through, a lot of investigations that are beyond the physio. So obviously physio screens for these sort of things. Should we see some of these things, it's get them referred on, get them seen by a doctor. That's out of a physio's scope to deal with the further on from there. But yeah, if you're experiencing any of those symptoms, it is worth stopping and the exercise you're doing. We always recommend that there's obviously no alcohol, no like hot showers or anything like that, no driving, not too much screen time. A few of the players that I was playing in were still in school or college, so making sure that they probably need a few days off of that sort of heavy concentration from there as well.
That's spinal injuries and concussions. Those are pretty tricky. So that's tough. For runners more specifically, what types of injuries do you typically see, and how would you suggest to treat them? We'll say, you said ITV, so we don't have to go through that again, but a lot of times I see shin splints. I feel like I've had athletes with shin splints lately. So let's start there.
So for shin splints, obviously medical term like the medial tibial stress syndrome, is one that a physio is pretty good at diagnosing, but in terms of rehab for that, it's really, you need to get some time off impact. So you shouldn't be necessarily running through pain when it's shin splints. I think it's one of the only one of the few injuries that come with running that will result in time off feet. So they can do like cross training, so things like the cycling, things like the swimming, provided it's not impactful, provided it's not increasing pain levels or anything like that. So like medial tibial stress syndrome should be treated as a bone stress injury. So yeah, bit of time off feet, and there's a few like risk factors that could lead you to be more prone to getting like shin splints, as you say. So one of the things I did want to mention, just to sort of raise a bit more sort of awareness about, is REDS, so the relative energy depletion syndrome. I think so, yeah. And it's basically where it used to be called like the athletic female triad, and it's just to do with not getting in enough energy. So your body can't go through that natural process of the bone turnover. So bone turnover is where it's like continuous process where dead or decaying bone is shifted out, new bone brought back in, basically. And that's how things like osteoporosis happen, because too much bone gets taken out, not enough bone gets put back in effectively. And that's what can happen when you go through REDS. So when you're not fueling correctly, and you're not giving the body the fuel it needs to rest and recover as well. So what I say for a shin splints rehab, it is about deloading and slowly building back into it once the pain begins to settle.
Great. Yeah, REDS is such a big issue, obviously. But to talk a little bit more about shin splints, when you say medial tibial stress syndrome, the tibialis muscle in the medial portion, so the middle portion obviously being around the tibia. And so what's happening with shin splints, what would you say is going on? Is the muscle literally pulling away from that bone in the lower leg?
So it can be. So when we say medial tibial, that just means like the inside of your shin bone, basically. So it's when there's an issue with like the bone density to the to the tibia, to the shin bone. And what you can find as well is some of the pain in and around that area is from where the muscles come and attach into that side as well. So you can get a lot of that sort of pulling, a lot of that inflammation coming from like the attachment points in and around that area. But the main sort of like red flag that we're looking for is that bony pain to the area, when it's the issue with like the bone density, just from the forces that are being put through it, from maybe like someone's heavy footed and taking that load through, or maybe the soleus, maybe the gastroc, like the calf complex, isn't doing the job correctly in supporting that for on any sort of like striking or push off, really.
Great. So, well, it's not great, but I appreciate your explanation. So basically that bone, it's weak most of the time, because it's not, like you said, osteoclasts are not putting down enough bone, and the osteoclasts are all taking it away. But
Correct.
So for circling back to RED-S, and I appreciate that the nomenclature for that particular condition has been changed, because it is not exclusive to females, obviously, and because you see it in men as well. But how, I guess that's a kind of awkward conversation to have, but hopefully it's becoming more normal for physios to have their clients and say, what's your diet like? You're probably asking females, are you having a regular menstrual cycle, and things like that. And luckily everything is shifting so that conversation is becoming more normal. And when I was in college, it was kind of like, you don't tell anybody if any kind of bone injury is happening. You don't tell anybody if your period is not regular, that kind of thing. And so I do appreciate how times are changing, that people such as yourself are cognizant of and ready to ask those kinds of difficult questions.
Yeah, so it's one of those. I feel like it can be awkward, but it's for the patient or the athlete's best care at the end of the day. I think if you think about the risks of not having those conversations, they far outweigh the awkwardness of having the conversation. So obviously asking if, like females, if everything's normal with a cycle, if everything's happening as it should be. And then similarly with males, asking if they get an erection in the morning. And If they're not, that can be a sign of low testosterone, and that can be a sign of redness, of something else happening in the background that could be having a real impact on their symptoms.
I appreciate you mentioned testosterone, because I was speaking with someone else yesterday, Bob Siebohar, who he is a registered dietitian here in the United States. And he said that interestingly enough, research, I cannot talk today, research is indicating that men in their 30s and 40s are tending to have lower testosterone that he's seeing in his clinic. And it's crazy to me, because, I ask, first off, is it because more people are being tested and you're just more data points, or is there something really going on? But have you noticed that too, that males that you see, A, do you ask for blood work, and B, have you noticed a similar trend?
So it's interesting. I think obviously we can ask for blood work. We do look over it, but it's out of our scope to do anything about it. So if we notice anything's going on, we'd speak to like one of the advanced medical practitioners or the GP to have a look at that if we're concerned about something else. I think it can go one of two ways. I think there's a lot more access to younger lads getting involved in anabolics, getting involved in testosterone themselves without any sort of need to, because they're seeing pressures online to get as big as they can in the gym. So I think it can go one of two ways. Obviously we're seeing a trend at the moment with a lot of people having quite low, but we're also seeing a lot of people take it themselves, and they're 20. They shouldn't need to be, or shouldn't feel like they need to be doing that. So yeah.
With testosterone supplementation, and let me know if this is out of your scope, but if younger men who don't need to be taking extra testosterone start taking testosterone, what kind of negative side effects are there?
So yeah, a little bit out of my scope as a physio. I know certainly from younger lads taking the anabolics, like the anabolic steroids and things like that, that it does, from a physio point of view, really reduces tendon health. So we see loads of big jack men, but they've got bicep ruptures, they've got pec ruptures, they've got Achilles ruptures, and they've just decreased that tendon quality, but continue to really heavily load it. And when you're putting a poor quality tendon under quite a large amount of stress, it's no wonder that we're dealing with a bit of an increase in those sort of related tendon issues.
That's so interesting, because you would think testosterone would result in more muscles, yet it also causes tendons to become weaker. That's crazy. I wonder what kind of antagonistic things are going on internally to cause that. I'm going to have to do research later, clearly.
I think you can just find that, particularly with a lot of that sort of thing, that the muscles will develop a lot quicker and a lot faster
Oh, that makes
than
sense.
are ready to take that load. So I think that's where a lot of the problems lie. Obviously, I'm not too well researched in that myself, but if you're increasing your muscle mass too quick, but you're not allowing the tendons to catch up, it's a recipe for some sort of tendon issue, isn't it?
That definitely makes a lot of sense, because they don't necessarily become stronger at the same rate, especially if the muscles are being enhanced in a really different, bizarre way. So, yeah, that's interesting. But Paddy, I really appreciate your time today. And is there anything else that would you like to tell people if they want to work with you? Because you've been great in helping me manage my athletes in a virtual capacity. Are you taking on more clients virtually right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Diaries as open as can be. So if anyone wants to get in contact, got a Instagram, so at Paddy's on the Run, or an email of plphysio@outlook.com. If you drop me a follow, drop me a DM, or drop me an email, happy enough to get back, and we'll see if we can sort something out.
Great. And for our listeners, you can definitely learn more about Paddy and his athletic endeavors via those avenues, but also your work as well is reflected on those channels, right?
Absolutely, particularly on the Instagram, like to share a bit of my training, bit of how that's going, but also just some nice rehab exercises I've been going through myself. Just some nice information about, did some about nutrition. As I saw Joe Wicks has put out a pretty damaging podcast today about not fueling for a marathon, so making sure we're getting the fueling across for that as well. So yeah, if you're interested in any of that, give us a follow.
Is he saying don't fuel, or what is what's going on there?
I heard it this morning. He released something saying that he ran a marathon without taking any fuel, without any water. He just had a bowl of porridge beforehand and he was absolutely fine. So he doesn't know why people need to fuel during the marathon. So yeah, I think it's just a recipe for disaster.
Well, we just accidentally gave him a whole bunch of new follows and people saying, well, what, we're going to check out that. So yeah, that's wild. But
Well,
yeah,
if I've misquoted, I hope Joe Wicks doesn't come for me. But it was definitely along those lines.
We'll have to have him on the podcast to clear things up. We'll have you on there too. Y'all can just battle it out.
I'll argue against him. There we go.
Yeah. Now I'll just sit back and watch. But yeah, thanks so much, Paddy. And I do hope that you get back. It sounds like you've made great progress doing a speed workout yesterday, and hopefully you can be back to full strength. You can tackle an ultra. You can get even faster in the marathon. And yeah, excited to see your journey.
No, I appreciate that. It was good fun. Enjoyed it. No, thank you.